Alright, so this is Blender, and this is the program that I've been using to make the 3D models for the scribe plates. This is the Dobbs head scribe plate I did. Uh, Took many iterations of it. I didn't save any of the failures, but there were quite a few. And even this one wasn't great. It's hollow, and the pitch of the groove is way too deep. So here's one I just whipped up of the Time Control Lab insignia. And you can see that the grooves for the stylus to follow are much more shallow. I also took into account here I offset in and offset in to create the groove, and that means that the bottom of the groove where the stylus actually centers was not following the actual outline, but was set in slightly. So I took that into account and adjusted the lines on this one down here. I'm going to print it out here in a bit. I've got another print going at this time, but I'm going to go ahead and make another template or another scribe plate to print two at once, and go ahead and utilize the printer. These fonts are called Bobco fonts, and they are fonts. So if I go in here, see there's a cursor, and I can type. There are more fonts here than the more letters. So every capital, every lowercase. It's a full font set. So there are a ton of unique symbols, and it's three or four, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I guess, different fonts. But I went through and cherry picked the iconography I like. And so I've got time control. Don't know, I might do crossed pipes. The Eye of Horus, although that's the Eye of Horus with abduction rays, would be a good one. One of our bombs. I think it's 4. We have 4 bombs. We might have a 5th one now. Infinite Bob. I think we're going to go with this. So I'm going to select the font, Shift D to duplicate it, and then pull it up. Tab to go edit. That's where I pulled the Time-Lapse symbol last time. And I'm going to delete everything out that other than what I want. Hit tab again to go back into object mode. And this is a font. You can, yeah, it's just it's a font. Down here you have the font menu. Here, let me drag this up so you can see everything. So I'm going to click on it, and we can convert to a curve, a mesh, or grease pencil for markup. I'm going to convert it to a mesh. Now you see our menu over here is changed to the mesh menu. Tab to go into edit mode again, and now this is the mesh edit mode. Tap A to select all. Come up here to mesh, clean up, limited dissolve. I have it set at 5 degrees, so any place that there were multiple vertices, you can see there it is before. If the angle change created by this vertice is less than 5 degrees, it will go away. So mesh, clean up, limited dissolve, and that's here, max angle. And then, yeah, a bunch of other options, but we don't need those. The angle is what we really care about. Going 5 degree keeps enough of the fluidity so that it doesn't wind up looking jagged, because the font is vector, which is a mathematical formula that tells it how to draw the font. And so they're Bezier curves, and no matter how deep you zoom into it, it will stay smooth. So whenever I change it to a mesh, it's deciding when I convert it to mesh how dense to make it, and then that's too much data. So I change it to 5 degree. Limited dissolve at 5 degrees usually works pretty good for me. Alright, so there's that. I am going to go mesh, add right here, and we're going to add a plane to this. Drag it underneath, and it should be on the same plane. It is. And then tap number 2. So 1, if you just tap 1 while you're in edit mode, that puts you into vertice mode or select. 2 puts you into line select. 3 will put you into face select. So I'm tapping 2 to go into line select or edge, and I'm going to drag my edges in. To roughly the size of that. Now I'm going to say L for linked, and that was inset. Select invert was Control I. So L will select everything that's linked. If I'm touching this, that selects that, because I'm in edge mode. It's going to select all linked edges. I could have went through and did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 selections, and then that left the plane off, but what I could do is just select all of the plane, then Control I to invert my selection. Now I will right click and say separate selection. That's everything that was selected. It will separate it out into its own mesh up here. So now it's 701 and 702. Tab to get back into object mode. This is 701. And that it was 702. So I'll turn off the visibility over here of 701 so I can only work on the symbol. Tab to go into edit mode, and we will say 3 to go into what do they call it? Face mode. Select face, select edge, select vertices. So 3 to go into face mode, then I'll tap I for inset, then I'll give it a value of 1. We're in centimeters, we're in metric right now, just tens are easier math to do in Blender. And you see it's made everything, these faces across here. I'll tap enter to set it, and what's causing that is these areas right here in these curves. So I'm in edit mode. I'll go number 1 to get vertice mode. Select all of those, and then I'll say M for merge, and then A for at center, and that will merge all of those at center. I'll select these over here, MA at center again. I missed one. Now I've already found the center, so I'm going to say ML for last, and that'll merge at the last vertice. But I'll drag it in a little bit to clean it up. That's cleaned up most of that down there. Here, select all those, MA, and select all of these, and I want here not at the center, I want to go to the last one I selected because that looked like a good spot. I'm going to go to wireframe. To change how you're looking at it, tap Z, brings up your round menu. You can see your render mode, solid mode, material preview, or wireframe. Now what I'm doing, I press Z, and while I'm still holding it, move my mouse over and let go, and it will change it. So it's as easy as Z and a flick to the left will get you into wireframe mode. If you get into wireframe mode and you have vertices stacked on top of each other, you are certain whenever you do that you're getting everything. So it's a good reason to work in wireframe mode. Now I've went back to face mode, and the problem is I can't click this face here. You see the little dots are the centers of the faces. So I do know that that's the center of that face, but sometimes the center of the face, depending on the complexity of the mesh, will be outside of the actual mesh. It'll be over here. So if you have a C, a letter C, the center of the mesh will not be, or the center of the face will not be within the actual face. So whenever, let's say I'm zoomed in up here and I'm wanting to select this face, I'll just Z pull over to solid, and now I can select it, and then Z back to get back into what do they call it? Wireframe mode. So I've got that face selected again. I'll say I for inset again, and again we will go 1 centimeter, enter, and go back into vertice mode. That should have been merge at center. Alright, so you can also shift R. What that does is it repeats the last function you did. And try to straighten these up a little bit just because it makes it a little bit smoother when I'm dragging the stylus through. And I am merging a bunch of these together to get rid of some complexity in the geometry that isn't really going to do anything beneficial for us. This is what I was saying earlier also. I need to pay attention to the depth of this line here, or to the flow of this line here, because this is what I'm going to select and lower to create the bottom of my valley. So I need to keep that line in mind as I do it. So we've cleaned this portion up here up enough. So we'll come down here. You can also select, so I was working up here, and then I zoomed out. So whenever I want to be working straight up and down, you click the coordinates on your little 3-axis rows over here. But if I wanted to work up here, I can select that and tap the point key or the delete key on your numpad, and it will zoom you into it. And then I zoom out and do that, and tap the delete key, or it's the period or delete key on your number pad, and it will zoom you into it. Now the geometry over here looks fine. I don't need to change anything. I am going to tap into vertex and see there is a little something there I can clean up. It's not necessary, but it'll make for a slightly cleaner mesh. Alright, tap number 2 to get back into edge mode, and I will go around and select the edges. The white will be the last thing you selected. You can hold shift and then select the next in line, or next thing you want, or shift and click to unselect. Now this is the last thing I selected. You can hold control and then click somewhere, and it will select every item between the last thing you selected and what you're clicking in the shortest path possible. So that selected all of that. You do have to be careful because, you know, it's like, oh, well, I could keep going to up here, but it might jump. Right here, it'll probably jump to the inside of this because it's quicker. Oh, control. Nope, it actually went for it. But yeah, sometimes it'll jump to the inside of a curve because it's the quicker way. It's the shortest path. You just have to keep that in mind as you go. So there I have selected every edge that will be the bottom of the groove for the stylus. Now I could just pull this down, but what I do is I start pulling it, and while I'm still holding the mouse, I type the value that I want, and I want 6/10, or I want 6 millimeters down. So I'll type negative 0.6 and let go. Because it's set to centimeter as the primary measure, if I type 0.6, that's 6 millimeters. Alright, so that face is done. Tap 3 to get back into face mode. I'll select this. This one will go really easy because it's square, or it's only 4 vertices, 4 angles. So I'll say inset 1, enter, inset 1, enter. And tap 2 to get into edge mode. Select those. Offset negative 0.6 down. Tap 3 to get into face mode. Select, inset 1, enter. Alright, now just to make it, again, this is when I have to go do editing on stuff like this that's all on a plane. That's when I'll click my Z coordinate up here to lock my perspective looking down. I think it's called isometric view. Whenever you go like that, let's see what it says. Viewpoint, I would call it an isometric view. So let's clean this up. We'll tap 1 to get our vertices. Here I'm using the control click again to select things in a line. I want all of those to merge here, so I'll click M for merge, L for merge at last. You see the L is underlined there, so last. Let's clean that up. We'll come over here. Select all of those. There's not one conveniently located, so I'm going to say M and then A at center. And that will just merge all of these at their median point between them all. And then I'll just grab that and drag it out. Again, remembering that this line is going to be the line that the scribe follows. Just let go of a button. Alright, so over here we'll do the same. Merge at center. Click there. I want to select this, 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 and this. There are multiples right here. So I can just click Control and there, and that will select everything that it takes to get there. Or I could have clicked over here to select that as the very last point, because that's conveniently located where I want to terminate. So I'll say again, M, merge, L at last. Alright, now I want to select this face, so I'll tap 3 to go into face mode. Again, I can't select it, so I'm going to go Z, solid, select the face, Z, wireframe to go back to wireframe. Now I'll say again, inset for a value of 1, enter to set it, go back into our vertice mode. I'll go ahead and click those two and merge at last. These two I will merge at center. These two I will Control Z, merge at center. I Control L at last, just out of habit. I use merge at last way more often than anything else. Last, last, last. Control R. Or Shift R will repeat the last thing you did. And especially if you're going around and having to use Shift to select the next vertice anyway, when you've already got Shift selected, it's very convenient just to tap R to repeat the last thing you did. Alright, now I'm going to drag these around a little bit because again it's this line here that follows through that I'm concerned about. I like the way that looks, so I will... Now here I'm going to have to click this to get it to select everything down to it. If I click here, you see what it did to take the quickest path. So if I click here, it will go and then back up here, and zoom out. Okay, no, I forgot about the rest of everything. So tap 1 to get vertice mode. And here I want all of those to go there, so merge at last. Drag it to clean it up. Merge Yes. Merge last. Sorry, brain is doing not brain things. I'm trying to do brains, I promise. Alright. Now I want to leave these, so what I'm going to do is use the knife function, which is K. Tap K, and it brings up a knife. That's the first point I want. I want to then cut to here and cut to there. Once you've got everything you want, you tap enter and it will make those changes for you. Then I'm still in grab mode, so I can just grab these and move them around. Alright, and now I'm good to go. I want to drag that in just a little bit. Drag this up just a little bit more. Tap 2 to get into edge mode. Select all of our edges all the way around. And then grab offset down -0.6. And I wound up hitting a different button that canceled, so I was tapping other buttons, but you can use the keypad where I was typing the 0.6. Use that, like I said, the 0 or the delete key zooms you in on what you've selected. If you're not currently entering a digit, it uses that to fly your camera. So click here, drag down. Now I can say -0.6, enter. Then tab to get out of edit mode. Oh, I don't need to do that because this is all still one mesh. Okay, so I will say 3 for face mode. Select here, inset 1. 1 to get vertexes again. Select all of these, and I want to merge at that last point there. Merge at last. And merge at last. Alright. 3. Select. Inset 1. Enter. Go back. Tap 1 to get back into vertex mode. And I need to, so I'm going to take this edge. Now, if you're in vertex mode and you select both vertexes on the side of an edge, you go into edge mode, or it selects that edge. And it gives me now an option subdivide, which I wouldn't have if I only had one vertex selected. So I want to subdivide this into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to go 6. Now I'll go merge last, repeat, 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 repeat. Alright, I'm going to come up here. This button, you can tap O to get it, is proportional editing. And it will move everything. Now, once you click, you can roll your mouse to select how much and it affects out. Now, what I'm just trying to do here is adjust so that this gap and this gap are roughly the same, just so there's no hard edges when I engrave. Again, this will be the depth, but it's like a record groove. You want it to be fairly consistent in width. So that's why I was doing that. Always make sure to remember to go back out of proportional editing. Again, it's tap the O key, not the 0, but the O, Oscar. Tap the O key to go in and out of proportional editing. Oh man, this is hurting my brain over here, keeping up with everything. Alright, let's subdivide that by 2. Merge last. Merge last. Okay. I need to take you back here. You back here. You back here. Alright, so I've got this edge running across here where it shouldn't be, because I merged at the wrong point. So I'll go ahead and subdivide it, grab it, and merge it there so that we are consistent. This edge should have a little curve in it that I might have taken away, so we'll subdivide it, and then we'll say K for knife to do that there. That guarantees that we're cutting the face too. I could have just clicked those two and said I for insert and or infill or to fill, but it would have not necessarily cut the face, which I want it to do. Drag that there. Drag that there, yeah. Let's merge that. I think that's good. Again, this is the line that we are going to offset down to create the bottom of the groove. So we'll select it and then zoom out a little bit to see if we like it. Now this looks flat, but that's the way this is. But I don't like it. I am going to fix it. I'm pretty sure that's the way this image is. It's a very small change, but I think it'll make it flow better. Alright, yeah, I like that. So grab here, go down, -0.6, enter. Select our next face, inset 1, nothing to fix there, enter, inset 1, again nothing to fix there, just because it works well on this basic kind of geometry like that. So we'll go around, select these, offset down, -0.6. Go back into face mode, select, inset 1, inset 1, whew! Oh, okay. I didn't tap enter. Inset 1, enter, inset 1, enter. Now these two have crossed. We'll say merge at their center. These two have crossed. Merge at their center. Now I'm going to tap this and select L to which will select everything that's linked. And now I'm going to say spacebar and then R for or S for scale. So you've got G grab, R, rotate, S, scale, T, transform. Transform would do what I want also, but I'm going to go scale. So I'm still holding the shift or the space bar right now, which keeps this menu open. I just let go, so it went away. But shift, and then I'm going to say S. No. Space S for scale. And I'm going to stretch that sideways a little bit. I'm going to come up here and say select linked. Now let's look down on it. Again, this was the old outside, but this is going to be the center, so I'm going to stretch it out a little bit also. I stretched that. This, I'm going to grab the blue, and what that does is that will stretch on the green and the red. It will stretch in both axes other than the blue axis, which is Z, up and down here. But whenever you're looking straight down on it, you don't get to see it. Where this red will stretch by the blue and green axis, but not the red, and the same for the green here. So that is good. I think we're all good there. I'm going to turn back on the frame that I had around it. And now that this has depth, it is a separate item. Nope, I missed one. So I can see right here that I missed... So I did it. That was the last one we were working on. I did the insets, but I never went around and did the offset down. Alright, I don't know why that's selecting those two there. I don't want it to be selecting those two. So I'm going to go into vertex mode. As I was in line mode, it was selecting those, and it shouldn't have, but in vertex mode, this, when I can tell those are squares, that's the scale mode that I'm in. So I'm going to spacebar and G for move, but I think G grab. And now you see the arrows to move, so I'm going to go down -0.6. And now we have the depth there. Now that everything has depth, we can use this to perform what's known as a Boolean operation, where we will use it as a template to cut a hole in this plane. These are your modifiers over here. The wrench gets you your modifiers, and you can click here to decide what kind of modifier you want to use. You can bevel things. Boolean's what we're going to be using. Where's the other ones I use a lot? Skin and solidify are very handy. And then subdivision. We'll take something that's square and add divisions to it to make it more smooth. If you have a 3D model of a person or something that looks like old PlayStation 1 graphics, you can subdivide the surface to give it, make it more smooth. But here we're going to be using Boolean. That brings up the Boolean menu, and the dropper will let you select what object you want to Boolean with, or you can click in here and it will give you everything that's in your hierarchy. I know I'm wanting to Boolean it to 7.002. But if you have a ton of stuff in your hierarchy, you're not going to find that. And the easier thing to do is just to click your dropper and then come over here and dropper the object you want to Boolean to. Now, for some reason, it only got these pieces. Even though they're all in the same plane, it should have gotten them all. So I'm going to actually get rid of that Boolean option. And we're going to go back into here, tab to get into edit mode, and I want to select everything, every line on the very top surface. So what I do for that is I will look across my x-axis, and now you see that we're only looking at the top, or looking at it across the side. And if I select carefully, I can select only the things on the top. Now with those selected, I'm going to extrude. Now it automatically got the z-axis for me, but if it doesn't, you can type z. So E is extrude, and then type z, x, or y to force it to extrude in the plane you want. So I'm going to extrude up, click to set it, and what that does is that's simply creating good straight edges. Now I'm going to take this, and just for safe measure, I'm going to drag it down, and I'm going to say by 2. Just that way it's a number that I can drag back up by in a moment to line everything back up. Alright, so now I'm going to reselect the bottom, or the plane. I'm going to add modifier, Boolean, and then dropper, and select that object. Now it got it wrong. The issue there is the normals of the object I'm cutting it with. This object here is called the cutter. So what I'm going to do, hasn't done anything. It's all still there until I click apply. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select this. I'm going to say Alt N. Thought it was Alt N. Control N. No, Shift N. Shift N. No, it is Alt N. I just need to be in edit mode. Okay, that was the problem. Tap 3 to go into faces. Tap A to select all. Then Alt N is your normals menu, and tell it to recalculate the outside. And that should fix it. Now, well, I would have expected it all to pop back in. Let's just say fast and see if that fixes it. Yeah, sometimes going between fast and exact, it uses different math. But I can see that has cut it the way I want it to. So I'm going to say apply. And now that's actual geometry, where before we were just seeing a preview of the geometry. Now that is the geometry. I'm going to turn off our actual icon and see what has happened here. Alright, so it's gotten it right and wrong. I want to fill this face in because that should stay, but then this needs to go away. Delete. When you tap the delete key, it'll ask if you want to delete the vertices, the edge, or the face. Now if I delete the vertices, those vertices are part of this face. So if I delete the vertices, this face will go away. If I delete the edges are also part of this face, and that face would go away. But if I just tell it to delete face, it will leave the edges and the vertices that are shared by other objects. So I'll say delete F for face and get rid of that. Same thing here, and you can see it's left a face in there, but we can get rid of that. Delete face. Delete face. And we'll go back into here, tab, look across it all cross-eyed, go into wireframe so we can select everything, tap 1 to get vertices, and I'm select up here. Now I'm going to say delete again, and it's going to ask me if I want to delete vertices, edges, or faces. I want to delete vertices here because that will get rid of all of these vertices and the edges going down that we don't need anymore. So delete vertices. And what that has done is it's taken us back to what we had before we did our extrusion. Now I'll hover over it and tap L, and that will select everything linked to that vertex. Now we've got all of it selected. We knew that we drug it down by 2 centimeters, so we can drag back up by 2 centimeters and know that we are lined up perfectly. So I'm just going to toggle on and off over here a few times to be sure that, like this little hole, I want to be sure that it's not doubled up, because I sometimes will close these really small gaps whenever I'm making the piece that goes down. But this time, well, because I used a Boolean, it should be perfect, but I'm still just double checking. Alright, but that does look good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select the grooves, then I'm going to select the face, holding shift and then selecting. Once they're both selected, you can right click on it and say join, and that will make them the same piece of mesh over here. I'm going to tab in, and what has happened where I cleaned some stuff up, there are extra vertices here and there. So just cleaning that stuff up. What is this line? Oh, that's grid line. So I can come over here and say to turn the grid off and turn the floor off, and I won't see that line anymore that was going through there and confusing me. Alright, let's look at it straight down. Yep, everything looks good. Now the last thing we're going to want to do is merge by distance, because you see how I just clicked there but it didn't actually select the vertice. And then I zoom in and it does. But what it is it's because there's two vertices there. There's the one that's part of the groove, and then there's one that's part of the face. So in wireframe mode you can see it switching between the two, or I can hold shift and click and it'll select them both and then say merge L last, because they're in the same spot. And come over here, shift, merge it last. And I could go around and do that everywhere, which is what I used to do, I will admit. But the best thing to do, select everything, come up here, mesh, clean up, and merge by distance. And then you can tell it to the threshold, any two vertices that are closer than 0.1 centimeter, which is a millimeter, anything closer than a millimeter in distance, they will merge them automatically. And you saw whenever I did it, it'll say down here, you'll see how many vertices it removed. Over here you have total vertice count, total edges and total faces, how many triangles, you know, all, you get a bunch of that information down there that you might not realize it's giving you as you work, but those are all important. And you've got like other helpers up here or down here. But so we'll say clean up, merge by distance, and here 367 vertices removed. That's all of the little vertices around that were combining the groove path with the plate. So now that that's done, I'm going to select the outside of the plate and I'm going to extrude down. See, now this is just extruding where I drag it. So what I'm going to do, I want it to be sure I'm extruding straight down. I'll tap the Z button and you see that brings up the blue line that shows me that I'm extruding in the Z plane. And I'll just go down to about there. Now what I'll do, I'll look across to see the depth of my groove. And we'll go about like that. Alright, now I'm looking down. Now we can't see what I have selected because it is underneath the vertices and the edges right there. Now if I look from the bottom side, we can. But if I look from the top side, we can't. Now while those are still selected, I'm going to tap F, and that fills them. Those four vertices were all that was selected. F will fill the space between them. Now there is actually a face back there. I can look down again. I'm going to say extrude. No, I'm going to spacebar and S for scale. And then I'm going to scale on the, by holding this blue, scale on the green and the red axis. Although I know I'm going to change it later, so I only want to extrude on the green axis a little bit, just to give it a little definition. That's not going to slide into my engraver, but it makes it look good. Alright, so now that that's done, I can go into solid view, tab to get back out of edit mode, and actually I need to tab back into edit mode, tap 3 to select faces, all to select all faces, Alt N for the normals menu, and again I'm going to say recalculate outside. It doesn't matter for 3D modeling, or a model that you're going to 3D print, but for 3D modeling for video games, this only has one surface. You know how you stick your head through the wall and you can see out the backside? This only has one surface facing out. If you were inside of this looking out, you'll look straight through it. Oh, what happened to my bottom plane? That's wrong. There's supposed to be a face down here. Okay, now there's a face down there again. So I'm sure it's probably good, but now that it's a bar of chocolate, you know, it is a manifold shape. It would hold water. So now that it is a solid shape again, I'm going to Alt N normals, recalculate outside. If you ever want to see the normals, what's facing on the outside, you can come up here and turn on normals. And you've got a number of different ways of looking at it. This is the one I prefer. And it just puts a little, and you can adjust depending on the scale of your item. It just puts a little blue line sticking out the center of the face in the direction that that face is facing. So you can make sure everything's pointing right. But it gets very distracting while you're editing, so I just turn it on when I need it. But that's it. That will be a decent scribe plate. I'll drag it down here. Focus on it. Drag it up to have it at the same level as these. And I do want to stretch it a little bit thicker. Yep. Alright, I've stretched it a little bit, but what I really want to do is just pull the bottom down, because I don't want to make the channels any deeper, because that was part of the problem, is that my channels were too deep. But I want the plate to be thick enough to not warp either, so that should be good. Grab. I know that the height of this bob head right here was about the very max that I could fit, or that I could get reduced down onto a name tag using the maximum reduction my engraver is capable of. So here, we're going to scale this a little bit. Again, I'm not changing the thickness. I'm only scaling in the X and the Y by selecting the Z color. That's the omission square. Alright, grab. Yes, that's quite a bit bigger, but it is not taller than the Dobbs head. Yeah. Alright, I think that will be good, so I'll drag it here. Then I'm going to select, tab to go into edit mode, and select L for linked. That will select only linked objects, which is the piece that I know will fit into my printer's sled. Shift D for duplicate, then drag it away, then right click and separate selection. And this will make it its own object. It used to be part of this, but now it's its own object. And that means I can take it, and its origin is still over here because that's the center of what it used to be before I moved it. If you need to change the origin, right click when you're in object mode, right click and set origin to geometry, and that will set the origin in the center of your geometry. Alright, looking down on it now, and I will say Control S or spacebar S for stretch, and stretch that in. Now I'm going to show you another little trick that took me too long to learn, which is an amazing trick here in just a second. Alright, now we'll look from the side, and we want to lift this up, so spacebar G for grab, and lift that up until they're interfacing. Now we'll look down again and see this edge is almost lined up, but a little bit in. This one's way more in. Rather than sitting here and fighting this back and forth, we can do it at the same time. First thing we need to do is join these two objects. So again, select one, shift, select the other. They're both selected. And then join. Right click, and then you can say join. Now they are the same object. Now we will look down at it. Go to wireframe, tap 1 to get, or tap tab to go into edit mode, tap 1 to go into vertice mode, and then select all of these vertices that you want to be, we're wanting to line these up. Now, spacebar S for scale, and if you scale these, it makes that difference between them even more exaggerated. Now it's doing a scale factor. I want to scale it to 0. I don't want there to be any scale. I want it to be perfectly flat. So if you type 0, it brings them all together. So we'll do that same thing over here. Select these. Now start to scale, because if I say 0 without starting to tell it what axis I want to scale on, it will scale on all 3 axes to 0, and it will put, it's the same as saying merge at center. But yeah, scale, swing back and forth to tell it what axis you want to scale on, then tap 0, and it brings them all perfectly together into the same axis. Now we'll go back solid and tab out. You can see that's a perfectly smooth side there. And that's it. That is how I'm making the scribe plates. One more thing I want to do, it doesn't really affect anything here, but if it was for a video game asset, I will want to say object, apply, transforms. Now I only want to apply the rotation and the scale, and what that does is over here the rotation is 0, the scale is 1, where if I move things around and as I'm building, the scale and the rotation can get all over the place. Location, if I put it, if I said to apply the location, it's going to set this crosshair up here to 0, 0, 0. And I'll show you that. Object, apply, all transforms will do location, rotation, and scale. See, that moved my crosshair up here. And that is the origin for this object. Now that's really handy in making games when you have everything set up, a bunch of different meshes and components and game objects all scattered across. You can set all of their location and scale and rotation to zeros, and then no matter where you drop it in, the crosshair will set it at 0, 0, 0, and if you had it offset in the builder, it will offset it in the game world. But personally, I like my transform to be in the center of the object. So Here again, you see it's not at 0, but if you type zeros, you're guaranteed that's exactly where it was in your builder when you put it in your game engine. But I want, again, the origin to be in the center of the geometry, so set origin to geometry. Set origin to geometry. There we go. I don't know what I did wrong. I sent something flying somewhere. But yeah, that's it. So yes, rotation and scale are 0. Now we will export these, which is File, Export. We want to export these as an STL, which is a file that 3D printers use. There's a bunch of different options, but STL is what we want for this. I'm going to go to Storage. Storage 2 has 3D print, and we will call this TimeLab. Now say selected only over here, and that will export only what you had selected. If I just said export, it's going to take everything in here and export it, everything in the project. So selected only as an STL, calling it TimeLab. It's in my folder called 3D Print, and export. Then we'll select our next one. We'll say File, Export, STL. We're still in the correct thing. We're still selected only. I'm going to call this money. Export. Alright, now save our project so that we've saved all of our progress. And then we will open up Storage 2, 3D Print. It was TimeLab and money. Where is it? TimeLab. Double click that. STLs are already associated with ChituBox. If it's something I'm printing on my filament printer, I will have to tell it to open. There are damaged models. No, I don't want to do anything. Cancel. Let me zoom in and see why it says it's damaged. Well, actually, let me go ahead and just change the scale. It brings it in weird. It's because I'm coming from a game engine developer. You're not supposed to build your 3D models in Blender. You should be building them in, what is it called? Fusion 360 and programs like that. But I know how I need to scale that. Okay, yeah, it did do some weirdness here. That might be because I didn't recalculate my outside. So let's say Alt N recalculate outsides, tab out, File, Export, STL, TimeLab. TimeLab selected only, export. That should have overwrote. So delete that out. All right, that looks fine. So we'll repaired only. So maybe it did repair it for me. Oh, come on. It's so tiny. Scale 1000. Alright, so I know that will be good. Let's go ahead and angle this. You don't want to print anything flat like this. One, you get really weird moire patterns. And two, you get adhesion problems where it sticks to the bottom of the tank too strongly. So you want to print things on an angle, and an oblique angle if you can. going to spin it this way so I can fit two things on my build plate. Move, and then money. Tell it to fix it. Prepare, repair. Wait, it's so small. Where is it? Is that it over here? Yeah, there it is. Scale. And then move. And let's say rotate. Move. Alright, those are both ready. Now I am going to, you don't have to do this, but I like to lift them up just a little bit. You can do the same thing here, like you do in Blender, to click on it to get a dead side-on view. Yeah, that's just a little bit, but I like to lift, oh man, that was a little more than a little bit. Lift them up just a little bit, give some room for supports to go underneath them. Alright, so that is set up how I want it. I'm not hollowing these. What happened here? Why does that look weird? I don't like that. I'm not going to trust that to print. So we'll open this back up. I think it was a normals thing again. All Alt in, recalculate outside, selected, export STL, selected only. Money, export. Scale 10,000. Move, rotate. Lift it up just a little bit. Come on, what are you doing? That is weird. I don't know why it's not letting me set it the way I want it. Alright, there we go. Those look good now. So now I'll go climb up here to support. I'll prepare. I didn't have them both selected. So select them both over here. Support. Now it's doing some math on them. I've got all this set up the way I want it already. So I should just be able to say all. And it should throw all my supports underneath. And it did not do anywhere near what I wanted it to. Alright, let's say prepare. I think they're too high of an angle is the issue. Yes, it will get rid of the supports. Why is it? No, that's going the wrong way. Alright. Damn it. I forgot to select them both again. Support. Does some math. All. Alright, this is looking better. Yes, that is better. And we'll click this to get some of this out of our way. We can drag this up here. Yeah, that support looks pretty good. Now I am looking through right here to make sure it's not putting anything in there I'm going to need to get rid of. Here it is putting these tiny little pieces in, but that won't be that bad. It's not hard to get those out. We're good there. And again, here it's just tiny little spots. All right, that should be good. I think we're all sliced up properly. We'll go back to prepare. Bring our menu back out. There's a bunch of different things you can set up here in your profile. How long you want your bottom exposure time. You want a good long exposure time for your bottom layers to make them seat to the raft or the build plate. And I have a bottom layer count of 6, so it will do 30-second exposure on the first 6 layers. And then I have an exposure time of 1.2 seconds per layer after that. You have to play with all those numbers. And then lifting distance, I didn't have it lifting far enough, and it wound up getting stuck, not releasing from the film. But yeah, there's things you have to play around with to get right. And I still don't have them perfect because plenty of prints keep failing on me. But I think I might finally have it sorted out. So select the profile you want to slice with. Also, if you're using different resins, you have to have different slicer profiles for different resins. They behave differently. But with them both selected, the profile you want to use, say slice. Alright, that's sliced. It will be 1,803 layers or exposures to do all of this. You can drag here and it will drag down and show you how everything's sliced up. And I think that should work pretty good. There are some times in here where there's a lot going on. That's about the most surface at one time. When you have a whole bunch of surface that's getting exposed, that's when you're going to get delamination, because it's a lot more for it to try to be pulling off of the PET sheet or the bottom of the tank, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I like that slice. We'll say save. Going to call this Scribes 2. Scribes 2 and save, and it takes forever for it to save. I don't know what the deal is about once it's sliced it. It should just be able to save it, but apparently it takes a while for the code for it to write the G code to run the printer. But anyhow, it's writing the file actually a little bit quicker than I expected. And once it's done, I've got a print going. Otherwise, I would have probably saved it directly to the USB. But once that print's finished, I'll bring the USB in here, and I simply take this file, it's writing here, put that on the USB and carry it out to the printer and click print. So that's it.